Epstein explained. So, we just had about 3 million new documents dropped, supposedly the last document drop on the Epstein files. I'm not going to get into specifics of this particular drop. There's a lot of pretty salacious things in there. There's nothing saying that they're not true, but there also isn't a ton of evidence to say that they are. So I think this is a case where people are going to believe what they want to believe, and I believe Donald Trump was a big enough piece of shit to do these most recently really disgusting things that we're seeing. But let's just get away from that. I want to give a little background, and I want to explain to everybody what this whole Epstein debacle was about. Jeffrey Epstein was a very, very rich man who got his money from the founder of Victoria's Secret. He used this money to form connections. Epstein, aside from being a pervert, was also an influence peddler. Epstein was the guy that knew everybody. He had a private island that always had girls on it, whatever kind of girls you wanted. If they were young, if they were too young. He had a nice little private island where you could go and just explore whatever your disgusting little heart desired. And he had a lot of friends because there's a lot of scumbags in the world. Now, Epstein on his island had cameras in the rooms. So as his friends were coming and enjoying whatever proclivities they happened to have, Epstein was recording all of this. So if you needed somebody to do something for you, approve a loan, hand over some money, vote a particular way on a particular bill, Epstein was the guy who could get shit done. You could talk to him, and he would talk to the person. And my theory is that he'd basically say, hey, you remember December 15th of yada yada? It's like, yeah, that girl was 15. So this allowed him to blackmail people. Epstein obviously had his own proclivities. A lot of the people that visited Epstein had a lot of their own proclivities. Some of these guys weren't there for like underage girls at all, probably. They were just there for the party. They didn't even know the worst of what was going on. But still, their dirty little secrets were in the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. So that's what it was. It was an influence peddling operation. Now, and Epstein also had connections with Israeli intelligence, because that influence peddling went a long way to make sure that people behaved themselves when it came to how they treated Israel. Now, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends, very, very close friends, for over a decade. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends because they had something in common. Girls, models, apparently a thing for young models. They had something else in common. Dirty money. Their relationship came to an end when Epstein wanted to buy a particularly prestigious property, and Donald Trump decided to swoop him on it. Turned around, sold it for a massive profit afterwards, but this really pissed off Jeffrey Epstein. He wanted this property, and Donald Trump fucked him. So Epstein starts talking shit. Donald Trump becomes president. Epstein gets arrested by Trump's FBI. And it's Trump's FBI head that takes possession of Epstein's safe, where he had all of his nastiest little mementos that he would trot out occasionally to show people, what he knew and who he knew and what he had on who. Because that was the thing about Epstein. Besides his disgusting sexual proclivities, he loved being the guy who knew everybody and knew everything and knew where the bodies were buried and knew what dirt was on this person or that person. He liked power. You get to a certain point with wealth where more wealth doesn't actually do you any good. What you really want is power. And Jeffrey Epstein had power. Knowledge is power. So Jeffrey Epstein gets arrested, ends up in a federal detention facility during Donald Trump's presidency. This is Trump's federal detention facility. And Jeffrey Epstein ends up dead. The official story is that he committed suicide, but my opinion? Nah, no fucking way. I think Epstein just knew too much. And that was inconvenient for Donald Trump. And I think Epstein was trying to exert a little bit of pressure on Trump to get him out of the trouble that he'd gotten himself into. So Trump just got rid of the problem. Then Donald Trump becomes president again. You got to keep in mind that his FBI head was retained by Biden. This was the person who had possession of all of this evidence. We get all the way through Biden's administration. Trump basically runs on releasing the Epstein files. And then after he's elected, decides to switch gears on everybody and say, there's nothing to see here. And nobody was fine with that. So they all demanded that they be released. And eventually, despite all the obfuscation from the Trump administration, eventually what we end up with is Congress voting in lockstep to release the files because nobody wants to be seen voting against the release of these files. So now we're where we are today. They've been slow walked out. We finally had the last of the files released about a month after they were supposed to be released. They're going to tell you that the nastiest bits of what's in there aren't true. And they're salacious. There may even be a few red herrings kind of thrown in there to throw everybody off. Now, I think the thing that most people don't understand is that this was not Jeffrey Epstein's main gig. He wasn't just a trafficker. That was honestly kind of incidental to all of this stuff. His main gig was helping people hide money, dodge taxes. So people would come to Jeffrey Epstein to get advice from him about how to illegally hide their money, how to dodge their taxes. That's honestly as big a deal as what happened with these girls, as disgusting as that was. This is the thing, because you got to realize not all of these people were hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein just to hang out with underage girls. There were a lot of people that hung out with Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein knew how to hide money. And it's my opinion that that's a big reason why a lot of these people don't want this information to come out. Because the criminality goes way past Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking and everybody's involvement in that was involved in it. But there you go. That's the whole Epstein thing explained.